Venerable Mahasangha, Dr. N.L.A. Karunaratna, Vice Chancellor, Professor Sudhanta Liyanage, Dean of the Faculty of Applied Sciences, Deans of other faculties, members of the University Council and Senate, members of the academic, administrative and non-academic staff, invitees, parents, well-wishers and graduates. It is a great honor for me and a privilege to be with you today at your convocation from one of the most progressive faculties in the country. I say progressive because as a former director of ITI, I have personally experienced the considerable changes in the quality of graduates coming out of the science faculty of the Sri Jayewardenepura University during the past few years. Dear graduates, today you take a very decisive step to the outside world. You are en route to building your career and your life. It is a happy occasion for both you and your family. It is also the time to reflect and think, to learn from the wisdom and advice of those who have been down this path before you. By getting an excellent education, you have built a strong and resilient foundation for the future. But please remember that your learning process does not come to an end today. Learning is a lifelong process. You will continue to learn at work, at your business, and at home. There is a famous saying that the man who graduates today and stops learning tomorrow is uneducated the day after. Success may not come rapidly or without difficulty, but if you go all out to do what's right, and if you work harder and dream bigger, then I am confident that you all will together make a significant contribution to the progress of this beautiful island nation of ours. Apart from the sound base you have built in your subject areas, it is also important to develop soft skills that employees out there are looking for. What then are the soft skills? The top 5 personal qualities or skills employees seek are communication skills, both verbal and written, analytical skills, strong work ethics, team play, works well with others, and ability and courage to take initiative. And employers want college graduates who can transition from textbook world to the practical work seamlessly. Dear graduates, all the planning and preparation in the world can't prepare you for the many bends and dips that will come your way. Be prepared for the unexpected, make room for unlikely events. You will no doubt make mistakes, but don't be discouraged or disheartened. Theodore Roosevelt said, "The only man who makes no mistakes is the man who never does anything." I am sure you don't want to be that man. Thomas Edison encountered several failures before inventing the first practical electric light bulb in 1879. Nobody saw the years of effort and the number of failures he had to face for that single life-defining moment. He knew that to enjoy success, one must be willing to taste bitter failures as well. During the next few minutes or so, let me outline briefly the science and technology status in the country and what is in store for you to help you climb the ladder of life. Let me start with a quote from His Excellency the President in the Mahinda Chintana Vision for the Future. Over the next 6 years, I will dedicate myself to increase our per capita income to well above $4,000, thereby placing our country in the ranks of middle-income nation. That was His Excellency Mahinda Chintana Vision. This requires almost doubling of our present per capita income, and one of the critical factors to reach this goal will be the investment in science, technology and innovation. If we are to take the country forward from a basic factor-driven economy to an innovation-led economy, effective use of knowledge through the generation of technology is vital. Some of the strategies proposed by the government to increase our GDP are to raise the high-tech value-added exports from the current 1.5% to 10% and to achieve a marked increase of import replacement in selected production through enhanced and focused R&D within the next 5 years. Several export sectors such as apparel, value-added tea and rubber products, jewelry, ceramics, etc. have been targeted for high-tech intervention to raise export growth by 24% over the next 3 years. This is going to create an immediate demand for high-quality scientists and engineers, particularly in government research institutes and private companies. When it comes to import replacement, several sectors are being targeted at for technological intervention. Let me discuss a few of them. Dairy and livestock industry is a unique economic activity that can be expanded rapidly in our country. One of the major issues in the dairy sector is the low productivity. While we produce on the average about 6 liters of milk per cow per day, Israel, a desert in the Middle East, produces about 22 liters per cow per day. The reason behind the phenomenal success of Israel in milk production is science and technology. With focused R&D, our milk yield can be raised manifold, which will save US $350 million annually in foreign exchange and generate new income sources for our rural entrepreneurs. Although we are surrounded by ocean, we continue to import dried fish and canned fish, spending annually around $150 million US. Hence, development in the fishery sector, both marine and inland fisheries, particularly the production of dried fish and canned fish, is a priority for the government. In the 80s, Sri Lanka produced 30% of the country's sugar requirement. But today, this figure has declined to less than 6%, resulting in the import of sugar costing US $450 million annually. Sugar industry is another key sector that can benefit from S&T inputs, which can reduce our dependence on imports significantly. Last year, we spent US $6,000 million, 1/3 of our total cost of all imports, to import oil to meet our country's energy demand. If we are to reduce this import bill, we need to actively encourage research and development in renewable energy, such as solar, biomass, and other renewable energy sources. The destruction of natural forests, rivers and reservoirs, rainforests, animals and wildlife has brought about severe hardships across the entire world. The government has recognized the green environment as a cornerstone of our development and has proposed to expand the forestry coverage to 35% of land, targeting 250,000 hectares with conservation programs to preserve rainforests, reservoirs, and the wildlife as an integral part. Now, all these interventions that I have discussed, whether it is to increase our exports or to replace our imports or to preserve our environment or to fulfill other strategies identified in the National Science, Technology and Innovation Agenda, require quality science and engineering graduates. The demand for them in the universities, government research institutions, and the private sector is expected to rise significantly in the coming years. But today, we are woefully short of quality science and engineering graduates. At present, Sri Lanka has only about 4,000 researchers in research-related jobs in the 31 state research institutes, 16 universities, and few private sector industries all put together. We have only about 237 researchers per 1 million people, which is far below that of other countries in the region and the world average of 894 researchers per million inhabitants. The government has identified this as a critical need and has proposed to increase this figure to about 20,000 by the year 2020. Universities, in particular science and engineering faculties, have to gear themselves to supply this captive demand in the coming years. Let me relate to you a story about connecting the dots from Steve Jobs' biography. Steve Jobs, as you know, is the inventor of the Apple computers and is one of the great inventors of the 21st century. Steve Jobs entered Reed College, one of the prestigious colleges in the USA. But after just 6 months, he dropped out of college. But he stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months. He could not see the value in the college education, as he had no idea what he wanted to do with this life and no idea how college was going to help him figure it out. But looking back, Steve Jobs says it was one of the best decisions he ever made, because the minute he dropped out, he could stop taking the required classes that did not interest him and begin going for classes that looked interesting. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country, that is in USA. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed, and Steve Jobs was very much interested in learning the art. Steve Jobs decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. He learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes a great typography. It was a beautiful, historical, artistically subtle, in a way that science can't capture, and he found that fascinating. At that time, he did not have even the smallest hope that it would have a practical application in his life. But 10 years later, when his team was designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to him. And they designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If he had never dropped out, he would never have attended the calligraphy courses in college. And the Mac would have never had the multiple typefaces of proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have. Of course, while in college, it was impossible for Steve Jobs to connect the dots looking forward. But it all fell into place looking backwards 10 years later. Steve Jobs advised, therefore, you too have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, the destiny, life, karma, or whatever. This approach has never let Steve Jobs down, and it has made him all the difference in his life. Although a significant milestone in Steve's life was when he was sacked from Apple. The company he formed, Steve started Apple with roommate Wozniak in his parents' garage when he was 20. And in 10 years, Apple had grown into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. As Apple grew, they hired someone who Steve Jobs thought was very talented to run the company with him. And for the first year or so, things went well. But then they fell out, and the board of directors sided with the newcomer. So just 1 year after Apple had released their finest creation, the Macintosh, Steve was sacked out at the age of 30. What had been the focus of his entire adult life was gone. And sure, it was devastating for Steve Jobs. Although he did not see it then, getting fired from Apple was the best thing could have ever happened to Steve Jobs. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. Less sure about everything. It freed him from the shackles of business. He was free to enter one of the most creative periods of his life. He started a company named Next and another company named Pixar. And Pixar went out to create the world's first computer animated feature film, Toy Story. And Pixar today is the most successful animation studio in the world. In a remarkable turn of events, Apple bought Next and Steve returned to Apple. And the technology they developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current resurgence. The iPod, the iPhone, and iPad, all Steve's brilliant creations. These devices have dramatically changed the way in which we communicate and the way in which we consume content. And in a space of 8 years, he transformed Apple from the brink of bankruptcy into a stock market superstar. And in 2010, Apple became the biggest publicly quoted firm, US dollars 347 billion, surpassing ExxonMobil. Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick, Steve Jobs says. That is exactly what happened to him. He did not lose faith. What kept him going was just doing that which he loved to do. It advised to all of us, you have got to find what you love. And that is as true for your work as it is for your lovers. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be fully satisfied is to do what you believe is a great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. Ladies and gentlemen and graduates, a truly remarkable life story of Steve Jobs. His fascination with calligraphy during his college days enabled him to develop the famous Macintosh fonts 10 years later, which became the benchmark for all the computers. Even after he was sacked and publicly humiliated by Apple, he continued to do what he loved, computers, and came back to Apple as the CEO and made it one of the most admired companies in the world today. Let me conclude my speech by quoting His Excellency the President from the Budget Speech 2013, quote, "Family, religion and culture are well connected in the Sri Lankan value system. Mahinda Chintana is a vision designed to ensure that all aspects of households and the community are empowered to promote family values, eliminate the use of harmful drugs, provide care for the elderly and disabled persons, prevent diseases in the primary stage, encourage a healthy lifestyle, and promote communal and religious harmony in our society." President Barack Obama, during his recent commencement address to the Morehouse College, shared similar sentiments when he said, "I know that when I am on my deathbed someday, I won't be thinking about any particular legislation I passed on policy or whatever I promoted. I won't be thinking about any particular, I won't be thinking about the speech I gave or the Nobel Prize I received. I will be thinking about a walk I took with my daughters, a lazy afternoon with my wife, whether I did right by all of them." Dear graduates, the message from these two leaders are crystal clear. What is important at the end is not how much money you earned, or how big a position you held, or how many prizes, awards you received in your lifetime. What is important is to lead a healthy life, giving priority to family values and communal and religious harmony, and become a respected citizen in the country. Let me leave with your famous quote from Dalai Lama when you step outside of this hall and venture into the real world. Take care of your thoughts because they become words. Take care of your words because they will become actions. Take care of your actions because they will become habits. Take care of your habits because they will form your character. Take care of your character because it will form your destiny, and your destiny will be your life. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.